Welcome to Season 3 and Episode 6 of the Smarketing Talk podcast, produced by Landscape Leadership. I'm your host, Chad Diller. I'm the Director of Client Success here at Landscape Leadership, and I'm joined by our founder and CEO, Chris Heiler.
Hello, Chad. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
If you own or work for a lawn and landscape company, you are in the right place. This is where we share our candid thoughts about sales and marketing as it relates to your business. So thank you for joining us. So, Chris, today's podcast episode, the topic was taken right from an email that I got a few weeks ago, a conversation that I was having with a company owner. His name's Jonathan. He owns a lawn and landscape company that's just under $1 million, and they do pretty much lawn care and lighting was pretty much what makes up their business. And he reached out to us on our website and he requested a consultation. And I usually have a few questions to see if there's going to be a good fit. And I just determined it probably wasn't a good fit. Just to give you some background. So just like you have an ideal client, us as an agency does. And we typically end up finding that we work with companies that are $2 million or higher in annual revenue, because just like many of you should, we also have a minimum level of engagement of things, money that our clients spend to help us. So for us to help them throughout the year. And so that sometimes means that a lot of these company owners that reach out with really great questions, we just can't work with because we're just not a good fit.
Right. So our minimum level of engagement right now is about, I think, $48,000 a year is usually what a company is going to spend with us at a minimum. So a lot of companies that are $1 million or a little, under $1 million, they just don't have the budget for that. But we are, we're very fortunate that these companies reach out to us and want to talk to us and inquire about working with us. So we're very fortunate about that. But and actually, if it was up to Chad would probably work with everybody. Chad would be very happy having 50 clients, even 100 clients that we were working with.
At least I think I would be.
Yeah, maybe. Right. So you have to do the work. But yeah, we intentionally limit our capacity, meaning the number of companies that we choose to work with, because for a couple of reasons. One, just the way that we're set up as an agency. Like, we're a small team, right? There's 4 of us full time, and we really do act as a team for our clients. So if we're working with 15 or 16 companies at one time, we really take a team approach for each client, because we all have our strengths and weaknesses. And like, Chad's good at certain things, Emmett's good at certain things, right? So we have this good dynamic as a team. And then because of that, we really have a big impact on the clients that we work with. And not just top line, but bottom line, the profit that they're making. And it's not easy to scale that. We can't just say, okay, we're going to go from 15 clients to 30 clients and then 80 clients. We can't do that because it's a small team. It would be very difficult finding the right people, to scale that up. We just couldn't do it. And I don't want to do it. So we have to be very careful about who we work with. And in this case, Jonathan's company, just under $1 million, probably doesn't have the budget right now anyway to work with us. And did you describe what kind of company he was? Because he does lawn care and lighting.
Yeah, that's most of what he does. Like Chris said, I like to help people. So yeah, I would love for us to work with more clients. And you're probably the same way. If you own a lawn landscape company, you have a capacity. Well, you do have a capacity for production and to do it really well. Of course, you can hire more people, you can outfit your organization with equipment and all those things. But at some point, there becomes that line where you find your sweet spot. That's kind of where we're at. But we do like helping everybody, even if they don't become a client at Landscape Leadership. So that's what today's podcast is about, is helping people like Jonathan. Maybe you're in this position where Jonathan is. So this topic is just for you. So let me go to his specific question and read that to you. After I told him, sorry, I can't help you. I wish I could. So, Jonathan, here I am helping you with this podcast, but here was his question. Chad, help me understand how us smaller guys with smaller budgets who want to be bigger companies with bigger budgets, what should we do? What do we do until we can afford top marketing talent? Are we just supposed to try to get there working with underperforming marketers and DIY marketing trial and errors? Do we just slug it out year after year until we reach a certain number to hire a good marketing professional like landscape leadership? What would you do if you were in my smaller position for marketing? And so I thought, wow, what a really great question and podcast episode for us and for our listeners, companies out there that are in this position. So that's why we're attempting to answer this question today.
So thinking about Jonathan specifically, and I don't want to say the name of his company, but it is a what he called lawn care and landscape lighting, I believe is the company tagline. Okay. So just keep that in mind. So starting out, before you even think about how you're going to promote your services or market your services, I think a lot of companies get ahead of themselves a little bit and they're not thinking enough about branding. So what does their brand look like? What do they stand for? And their positioning. So their positioning strategy. Um, because really you've got to create an identity for your company so you can differentiate yourself from your competitors. All right. You don't need to hire an agency for that. Like as a small business owner, you have to figure that out for yourself. And you should do that as early as possible. Um, you don't need to hire someone like that, like us, for that. So when you create your company, the things that you need to think about first when it comes to the brand, obviously the name, right? So you got to get the name right. And a lot of companies, as you know, Chad, screw that up in our
Oh yeah.
industry. We could do a separate podcast on that. Branding also means your visual identity, so your logo, the colors you choose, all of that. You got to get that right before you start thinking about what are all the different things that you're going to do to actually promote your services and bring in more customers. Get the branding right, and then you've got to have a really good, strong positioning strategy. And when I talk about positioning, I mean what are the services you offer, who you offer them to, and then where you offer those services. Companies don't give this enough thought. The biggest mistake most companies make is that they try to be everything for everybody, meaning they think they need to be full service, offering everything under the moon to everybody, whether residential customers, commercial customers. Um, that's a huge mistake. Now, in Jonathan's case, he's done a decent job with his positioning to this point from what I've seen, and I've only looked at his website. But he's clearly a lawn care and landscape lighting company. That's what he calls it. So he's narrowing his scope of services, which is actually a good thing. And what I would suggest to Jonathan, though, at this point with his company is I would suggest that he is a lawn care company. Drop the whole landscape lighting from the brand and from the name. Just be a lawn care company. That's how he wants to be seen. That's what his identity should be. And then if he wants to sell landscape lighting, that's fine. But don't lead with that. Like don't make that a part of the brand. Be a lawn care company. You agree with that, Chad?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some really atrocious company names that have included 3 or 4 different service offerings right in their name, and it's just convoluted. And then, we talk to companies. I would say they're kind of like that middle aged maturity where they're not new, but they're down the road and they realized, hey, we used to do landscape lighting, but just take it off the website because we could never figure out how to make any money at it anyway. And that's the danger when you include too many specific services that aren't your core proficiencies in your company name and your brand image, because you kind of pigeonhole yourself to have to rebrand later anyway.
Yeah. So for all companies listening to this, you got to get the brand right. and then your positioning, right? How do you create an identity for yourself? How do you differentiate yourself from your competitors? In Jonathan's case, I think he's done pretty decent so far. The only suggestion I would make is be a lawn care company. Uh, so then the next thing, kind of big picture with this, before we get into all the specific tactics and everything, is Jonathan really needs to come up with a marketing strategy. He should have a short-term strategy and a longer-term strategy. Short term, I'm thinking, how do you finish out 2020, and then what are you doing for 2021? Right. That's what I would be thinking about when I say short-term marketing strategy. Uh, so I would create that. I would make a plan for it, and then I would budget for that. So let's talk about budget for a minute. If this is let's say Jonathan is going to project $1 million revenue 2021. So a lot of times, you know this, Chad, the number that gets thrown out for what's a budget for marketing, sometimes people will say 10%. So if he's projecting $1 million, 10% of that is 100 grand. Is Jonathan going to spend 100 grand on marketing in 2021?
No way.
No, it's not realistic. 5%, 50,000, maybe he would do that, but let's say we're going to be really conservative with what he's going to spend. So let's say he's going to have a $25,000 budget in 2021. All right. So let's talk through what kind of things Jonathan could do next year if he's got $25,000 to work with. Like, what are the basic things that he needs to be taking care of?
Sure. Yeah. Well, let's say so. Let's call this phase one. And we'll talk about. And phase one could be 1 year, but it could be the next 3 years. It just really depends on your ability to execute these details. But let's just talk about that. So, as you mentioned before, I would definitely focus on your brand identity, and so that means enlisting some help to change your company name, to develop a new logo, to understand the consistent use of colors and a brand style guide of how you're going, whether you're using a printer or a web designer, whoever it is, getting that stuff locked down in a very clear, concise way. These are the fonts that are used, all that stuff. I would do that right away. And then the next thing, these get into different tactics. I would say this: collect as many client and prospect emails as you possibly can. And I can tell you that this takes a while. This sounds like something it's like, oh, that's easy. But if you determine as a company owner you want to do this, it's going to take you a year or more to whip your team into shape to get this. I mean, like, make it a policy that nothing goes in without the email. And I'll explain why when we get into phase two of this, because you're going to use those. Some point in time, you're going to want to market through email. The next thing is Google My Business. I would assume that a lot of businesses that are listening to this already have it set up. If you don't, claim it, fill your listing out. There's all kinds of other directory listings that you should have your business on. And then if you have the bandwidth, start requesting reviews from your happy customers on Google My Business. It's never too early to start doing that after you have that claim.
Let me mention one thing here too.
Yeah.
For Jonathan, claim your Google My Business listing, like you said, and then use a software like Moz Local. That's what we use, right? To claim and manage all of these other online business directories that are out there, like Merchant Circle, Yelp, Super Pages, all of
Tons
those
of them.
things. Use inexpensive software like Moz Local. I think it costs $100 a year. Sign up for that. Use it. It's very helpful.
Yeah. After you get all those directory listings all wrapped up there and going in the right direction, then this is one that probably won't come to any of you as a surprise, and that's wrap your vehicles. And I mean, do this well. We've written articles in the past about some companies do too little and some do too much, and some are just not very tasteful. I even see huge companies whose order 50 sets of logo decals and they just slap it on the vehicle in the shop whenever they outfit their new truck, and stuff is crooked and it's not sized right for the vehicle, and it can be a big mess. So really give a conscious effort to your vehicle graphics, sales vehicles, stuff in the field, all that.
how much do you think someone can expect to pay for vehicle wrapping?
Oh
Say based on a
goodness.
small fleet, like less than 10 vehicles.
Well, I mean, a pickup truck's probably going to run you somewhere between $1,500 to $3,000 to wrap, depending upon who you use. Um, it really depends. If you do a full wrap, sometimes you can get away with doing half wraps. It really depends. I mean, you get a box truck, you could be spending three, four, $5,000 to wrap a big box truck. But it's money well spent. If you're going to have the vehicle for a long time, it's going to definitely advertise your business.
Right.
Um,
And this is why you need to get your brand, the visual identity right from the beginning. I mean, if you're going to wrap your truck with the brand identity, you better be really sharp.
yeah, better look good. Next thing is, and again, this kind of goes along with it. Another thing that's probably not a surprise to you, you've seen this a lot, is yard signs. There's two different forms that I typically see of this. If you're doing application work like lawn care or plant health care or pest control, a lot of times companies will use little stakes that they stick in their front yard. Go big with it, 8.5 by 11 if you want. Nice big ones, real clean, clear, concise, company name, contact info. This is what we do. And then those bigger jobs like landscape, big maintenance jobs where you really renovate a property, or a construction job, or tree pruning, any of that stuff. You can use those throwaway 18 by 24 yard signs. You can usually get them for anywhere from $7 to $12, depending upon how many of those you order and how many colors you have. So definitely would do those and start strategically putting those in neighborhoods because people are going to see them.
Low cost.
Yeah, low cost and scalable too. So if you have a
Yep.
job, they're paying money. You got $10 on it for advertising. No big deal. The next thing is, and this is something that a lot of companies, one's starting out under $1 million and one's bigger than that. They always say, we get a lot of work from word of mouth, referrals. And I often ask them, what's your referral program? They say, well, we really don't have one per se. I just send stuff to people, send something to people when they give us a good referral. Well, this is a big opportunity. We've written articles about this before, of setting up a very formalized referral program. Also, with that, including ways that you can actually promote that to your clients, because they will forget. I hate to break it to you, but getting you leads is not their most important priority
Right.
in life. But then when they do that, reward them, and that goes a long way to have a great relationship with your client. You're sending them $50 or $100 or whatever it is, depending what they're referring to you. It goes a long way of saying thank you. So I would focus your efforts on that. The next item, I only have two left here for phase one, and the next item is probably going to eat up half of this budget. If you're $25,000, it's probably going to eat up a third to a half, and that's building a really nice website. Maybe it means redesigning your website. At minimum, you should be spending approximately $10,000 on a new website. Now, some of you are listening to that and you're saying, that's crazy. I got my website for $3,000. Well, I'm sure there's someone that will do your work for less too. And
Yeah.
we'll just leave it there. There's a lot that goes into building a website, from a architecture standpoint, an SEO standpoint, a content writing standpoint, all those things. And if you're spending less than that, I'd really be, questioning what you're getting for your money. We often recommend people in this position to build something on WordPress and make it really simple and clean, easy to use. Don't create 500 pages and let some agency talking you into building out all these community pages and just this crazy nonsense. Just real simple, concise, ones for each service, how to contact you, all that stuff. That's something I would definitely focus a big chunk on.
Can I take this last one?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
'Cause I know I added this one to the list, but when you're a smaller company, a lot of times the business owner just needs to take the lead on all the marketing, right? You need to do as much of this stuff as you can yourself, because you are the face of the company. And I'm sure Jonathan is in that position. So one of the things that you need to do, is get out there and be the face of your company within your community. Get involved in some different community events. um, get involved in different associations, different networking opportunities. You've got to do that yourself. It's not expensive. So, it's not something you need an agency for. You go out there, it's hustling, right? You just do that stuff yourself. And that's important when you're trying to grow a business on a smaller budget. You got to do that stuff. Just like going after publicity and things like that. Same thing. So these are all good things that you listed here, Chad. What are what would you say are a couple of things that Jonathan and some other companies in this situation should avoid in this phase one? Like, what should they not be spending money on right away?
Oh, so these are going to be some blanket statements. So take them for what they're worth. But there's a lot of truth behind and a lot of experience behind this. Because in my years of a marketer for a full service company, I've tried a lot of these things. So I see the energy and cost that they eat up and the minimal payoff sometimes. So one of these things, and I know I'm going to offend somebody by this, is stop wasting money on home shows and trade shows. Um, Unless you can prove that you're getting new opportunities that never would have came your way unless you participate in that event. It's a lot of work, especially if you're a design build contractor. You have 3 guys setting up your booth and building a patio and doing all this stuff. I mean, it's just so much work. So cost analysis is real important on that.
Well, there's other things you should prioritize before that. I don't know how much a home show costs, but if it's 10 grand, if that's 10 grand of your budget, that's $10,000 you could be putting to your vehicles and making
Yeah.
sure they're wrapped properly, or
Right.
redesigning your logo, right? Doing the things that we just talked about. Like, don't spend 10 grand on a home show if you don't have your website, you know, operating right for you.
Right. Right. So we say don't do them. Most of that means don't do them before you do these other things. It doesn't mean these are
Yeah.
absolutely bad ideas entirely. It just means that in this phase, you shouldn't be doing them. The other thing, and Chris, you and I see this a lot, is spending money with SEO companies.
Yeah.
Really, really,
Jeez.
really common. I would say 9 out of 10 companies that I talk to of any size will commonly say, I hired an SEO company and they spend X amount of dollars, 500,000, $2,000 a month. And I couldn't really tell you what we're getting for it. I think our SEO is a little bit better. This is, like a money racket in a lot of ways. Yes, they can do things that make a difference, but if your website is a
Mm.
piece of junk, then maybe you shouldn't be having somebody spending time enhancing efforts to get traffic to a website that really is in bad shape to begin with.
It's just a waste of money. Like, again, let's say you're spending $800 a month on this. That's almost $10,000 a year.
Yeah,
You could put that $10,000 somewhere else more important.
yeah, definitely. There's time for that later. The next thing would be is wasting too much time on social media. And that means with posting content and maybe even using paid ads. Again, it's a matter of your time is worth something. And if you're putting all these ads out and you're getting just likes and shares and clicks and comments, but you're not getting any leads, it's not a good use of your time and money. And that's very, very common. We see that, we see that often with
Yeah.
companies. And that will link into kind of my next thing too is pay-per-click. So a lot of companies that I talk to of all kinds of sizes spend a lot of money on pay-per-click, and they can't even tell me what's their cost per conversion or lead. They can't tell me how many of those sold, and they can't prove the ROI. And companies are spending thousands of dollars a month on pay-per-click, and that in stage one is probably not where you need to be. Yeah, it'll get you leads, but what's the cost to do this? I mean, it's crazy. The next thing I want, go ahead.
Hold on one second. So, pay per click, we know it can be effective. We
Oh
know
yeah.
it can work really well for lawn care companies like Jonathan. So, with thinking about Jonathan specifically,
Mhm.
where do you think Google ads and pay per click, at what point does that come into play for him?
I got a I have a whole video series I recorded on pay-per-click advertising and what you should spend and what services are good for that. But I just say this, something with a high sense of urgency, someone wants the problem fixed right away, and the ticket price is low. That's what works really, really well for pay-per-click. So if there's a lot of companies that are wasting money on design build and they're getting leads at like $800 a lead when it's all said and done. I mean, it's just something that phase one you probably shouldn't be doing. Next thing here is written content. And when I say that, I mean blogging. And I say that not because blogging is bad. It's, well, to be frank, a lot of companies don't do it very well when they're trying to do it themselves. They spend a lot of time between maybe the company owner and the landscape designer, a couple people on the team writing these articles. And then when we come into the mix later, none of them are ranking in search results. None of them are generating leads. And so they spend a lot of time doing that. And they're not writers. Or if they are writers, they don't understand the SEO side of it. So that can be a very big waste of time in stage one as well. Along with written content goes video content. Again, there's a lot of really bad video out there. And yeah, there's a piece of this that it's authentic. And, you know, when it's kind of raw and you're out there on a job site, but most of it is just really not remarkable at all. And
Yeah.
if you're creating video content, maybe you can use it later, but a lot of times the production value isn't that great. And you might be doing yourself a disservice. The next thing on the list is PR and publicity. Now, Chris did say PR and publicity, you know, if you have some relationships, go ahead and do it. But if you're paying a PR firm to try to get you noticed when you're this small of a company, I don't really know how much that's going to do for you. A lot of times that stuff comes at a real high premium, so I'm not sure I would focus on it. Try to start some relationships with, you know, newspaper writers or, you know, anchors on the news, the people, the news desk at your local news station. Maybe they'll pick you up once in a while and get you some publicity, but just be careful how much time you pour into it. Along with that, television, radio, a lot of companies, not a lot of companies this size, I don't think do a lot of television, but they do radio. Like I see a lot of companies getting biting on that one. Radio salespeople, man, they're amazing. They can convince you and show you that it works. And I have one of our clients, one out of 16 current clients that puts any faith in radio. And these are companies that are between $2 and $25 million. They just say, we've tried it multiple times, different places. It just hasn't worked. And I'm not even really sure, you know, how great that is. Driving down the road, you know, what are you going to do? You know, how much are you going to remember that? So, and then the last thing here that I would say that just be really leery of trying is lead generation sites. A lot of you are probably saying, oh yeah, like Home Advisor, Angie's List. I'm not saying don't have a profile. I'm not saying don't try them out. But if you're we often have companies that come to us that have been spending $10 to $15, $20,000 a year on Home Advisor. And when they start doing some analysis of what they got out of it, it's not that great. That money, like you said, Chris, could be diverted to some of these foundational core things that are going to last for time. It's not like a flash in the pan advertising method.
Right. And remember, we're talking about Jonathan's company. His budget's $25,000. He might spend 10 grand on a website redesign. He's not going to spend another 5,000 to 10,000 on Angie's List or something like that. He's got other priorities that are just way more important than that.
Yeah.
In this first phase anyways.
Yep. Sure. So let's move on to kind of phase two. Let's say all those things, whether it took you a year or 3 years, you kind of tackled all those and feel like you're doing pretty well at those things. Going back to that list, the next things that I would focus on in phase two, and this could start at year 2 if you kick butt and got all this stuff done, or go into, you know, years 4 and 5 of enlisting a strategy like this. The first thing would be professional photography. There is a lot of garbage out there that I see on websites. I mean, really bad DIY photos.
Or stock photos for lawn care.
Those two. If you get the luxury to look at as many lawn care and landscaping websites a week as I do, there's this guy in bib overalls. Man, that guy is everywhere. I mean, he's like one of the most recognized people in the green industry as far as I'm concerned. It's funny because a lot of you are using the same stock photos. And maybe your clients won't pick up on that, but I think people recognize when it's a stock photo, you know.
Yeah.
And when you still have rakes and half a pallet of pavers sitting in the lawn and want to show off the patio with no furniture on it and half of it's in the shade and half's in the sun. It's not making you look like the $2 to $10 million business you want to be. And you want to kind of project the image that you're trying to portray. And so professional photography, that might mean that, every year you spend $3, $6, $9,000, whatever it might be, on photos. Again, proportionate to what other stuff you're doing as well. The next item that I would recommend would be direct mail. That works for some things. I think, again, it's that same thing as pay-per-click. If it's something that is urgent, something that's low ticket, something that if you send it at a certain time, you're probably going to get a response. I don't think it works well for commercial maintenance or design build or any of that stuff. So direct mail can work really good, lawn care, irrigation, pest control, those sorts of things. So you might want to allocate some of your budget to start generating, to get some good lists. There are companies that can help you getting that in your target market. Start marketing those people, get them to your website, introduce them to your brand, because that into phase 3 will give you some brand recognition at least. Along with that, some print assets I think are really helpful too. By this time, you might not be the only person selling at your company. You might have a salesperson or two that are working for you. Maybe you already do. And to produce some really quality materials, assets that they can leave with prospects is good. Or say you're a lawn care or a mowing company and you just finished taking care of your property. It looks really good. You get those nice stripes down the lawn and you hang something on the door next either side of your client. That's another good way to pick up some clients. There's a bunch of different print assets, so you might want to start doing that. Again, you did a great job in phase 1 of nailing that branding and the style guide and all that stuff, so you got some really nice assets there. And then the last thing I would say is maybe at this phase, maybe you could get involved with some social media activity. And I say that meaning just some branding efforts, sharing content, things that you're doing, those professional pictures, some of those. But again, be careful. Watch how much time you spend on this. Like, don't think it's going to be the end all be all, because that's certainly not what we've seen so far.
And I got to push back on this too, on this list, because you're missing something really important.
All right.
Both first and second phase. So content marketing strategy. You got to have a content marketing strategy. And I don't want to dismiss that just because some companies do a really poor job at it. So a really well done content marketing strategy should be on this list. I don't want to, like with Jonathan, I don't want to assume he's going to do a crappy job at it. Maybe he would do a brilliant job at it. At some point, not necessarily in phase 1 in that first year or two, does he need to worry about content marketing. But at some point, it's really important to start blogging about important topics, especially topics for your local area. Like, we do that so much with our clients. We see the payoff. We see how important it is. It's a huge deal. You have to do a good job at it, obviously. Like, otherwise you're not going to get the impact from it, but it's got to be on our list. And then that kind of brings me to a couple points I wanted to make. One is, and I said this already, like with Jonathan, with a small company, you have to do as much of this stuff as you can yourself, right? But over time, you can hand off a little bit of it. So, like, Jonathan doesn't need to hand over everything to an agency like us where he needs a whole team. He can hand over just a little bit over time when he needs more help. So let's say he's going to start up a content marketing strategy. He wants to start blogging. Get help from a freelance writer. Just get help from really competent and capable people. Maybe he wants to budget some money for photography. Find yourself a really good photographer. He doesn't need an agency for that. He just needs a really competent local photographer. Same thing if he wants to do video. If he wants to redesign the website, find a really good, just a web developer, right? Easier said than done, I know. But my point is, over time, you do a lot of this yourself, but then you can hand off little by little and just find really competent people to help you with this. You don't need to just all of a sudden start paying 50 grand a year to an agency to handle it. So it's just, to me, if I'm talking to Jonathan, I'm saying, hey, it's a step by step process. Just unload a little bit at a time. Um, and then one thing I want to, or do you want to make a comment on that
No, I mean,
before I go to my next?
I think I understand in spirit what you're saying about doing that. I think the word of caution I would say is understand your limits. Just because you can and you're pulling off doesn't mean you're doing it well. And I think a lot of times what you have to do is go outside your industry to someone that really understands communication and marketing. Maybe it's a business peer that does marketing really, really well in their industry, and ask them to look at the things that you're producing. I understand what you're saying, Chris. I think it's time to start that and thinking about content. But I can tell you that when we onboard clients, sometimes that there's just a lot of things they've spent time on that, well, I don't feel are very great, and they're not really doing anything for them. So I would just say, I think there's a balance here that you have to find where you start participating in this, but also understand, what you can give to someone else and get some of that stuff done.
So let's say Jonathan ramps up his efforts. 2021, he's spending 25 grand. Maybe the next year he's spending 40 grand. At what point, do you think Jonathan needs to look at hiring a salesperson? How does that fit into this?
Yeah, I think there's this pain point. I think, the people that come to us that seem to be good fits are kind of at this between stage 2 and 3. And they've done all these foundational things, or they've done a lot of them. And there's some things I often hear is like they're not closing as many leads as they'd like. That's a common one. Sometimes just because of bandwidth, they can't get back to people as quickly.
Right.
They also sometimes will talk about there's some low hanging fruit that they're not picking.
Yep.
There's things every year they talk about, we're going to do this, and they don't. Just because people are busy, they're putting out fires. Sometimes the salespeople aren't even salespeople; they're managing accounts, doing all kinds of other things. We've talked about that before. And so it comes to this point where you're like, I think I want to hire somebody, but I need to have the leads to generate it. So I need to hire somebody that's done a better job at marketing than I have, so that we can furnish that salesperson with more leads that I want to hire. And that's kind of that pain point. The other thing, a lot of times, is that at this stage, I feel like business owners are starting to recognize what their activities should be on a day-to-day basis. And it's not that they don't like marketing. Maybe they enjoy some parts of the process, but they want to get out of that nitty gritty. Like they don't want to just keep doing checking their GMB listing, Google My Business listing, and just arranging certain things that just eat up a bunch of their time. They want to deal with it like on a high level, but they don't want to be getting down to the nitty gritty. And so that comes into that staffing. We get that question a lot. I don't know whether to hire somebody for marketing or another salesperson, or to just hire an agency. And a lot of times when you're asking that question, it's a good sign that you're probably somewhere between that stage 2 and stage 3 where you're ready to enlist the help of an agency.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. Well, I hope that this has helped. We could talk a long time about this, because you can tell we're very passionate about the things you should or shouldn't be doing. And it really boils down as a case-by-case basis. And so I really hope, Jonathan, if you're listening to this, I'm going to email this podcast to you. I hope this really has helped you. Maybe think about what you should be doing over the next couple of years. And hopefully you and I will be talking again in the future. And also, if you're like Jonathan and his company and you aren't quite sure what you're supposed to be doing now or things that you're wasting money on, I hope that this has been a tremendous help to you as well. So thanks a lot for tuning in. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can email us through our website, connect with Chris or myself on social media. We'll be doing the best that we can to answer those questions. Thanks for tuning in. We'll have another podcast episode coming soon to you through this Marketing Talk podcast. Have a really great day.